Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Coleman. I'm currently the mayor. And if the council are nutty enough, then they might elect me for another year in May. Thank you ever so much for coming this evening. Really appreciate you coming. It's quite a good turnout for an annual town assembly. Last year I don't think it was quite as busy as this, was it? Yes, appreciate you all coming, and we'll have questions and answers. As we go through the evening, there'll be a particular point, which is, I think, looking at this, and I've got the glasses on, so I should be able to see, which is item 5 on the agenda. I'm afraid this isn't a soapbox evening, so if you've got a lot to say that isn't actually a question, then I'd appreciate it if you withheld yourselves. Without further ado, I'm going to now introduce you to Claire Reynolds, who is our new vicar. Claire, would you like to come up? Claire's just going to say a few words for us.
Thank you very much, Richard. Yeah, I just wanted to say hello, and I'm here. So I know Reverend Stephen left you just over a year ago, and I arrived in January. So I've just been here a couple of months, so I just wanted to introduce myself and say, do contact the church if you ever need any, if there is any reason why we can help in any way, please do get in touch. So I served my curacy in Torquay, so I've come immediately from Torquay, immediately beforehand. I'm married to Al, who's a maths teacher, and we've got 2 children, Joanna and Andrew. Andrew's just in his last year of A-levels, and Joanna's at university, at Exeter University, also studying theology, which of course is the best subject. Hello, and I hope to meet those of you that I haven't yet met. Do come and have a chat with me afterwards. It would be lovely to meet you all. So thank you very much.
So I've just realised, printer's full, I've done things back to front. So item 2 on the agenda was for me to introduce myself to you, and I've got it every day beforehand. Anyhow, back to the agenda. Item 1, apologies. This is to receive apologies from councillors that haven't been able to make it this evening. We would usually take a vote on whether or not we would accept that, but because this isn't really an official meeting, I'll just let you know that we've had apologies from Councillor Fisher, Councillor Marsh and Councillor McNeil. Thank you. We'll go straight to item 3, as item 2 has already been dealt with, because I'm that good. Confirmation of minutes of the annual town assembly held on 8th of April 2025. We need to take a vote on that. Madam Clerk? Yeah. So, councillors, can I have I have a proposal from Councillor Ireland, a second from Councillor Leach. All in favour? That's unanimous. Weirdly enough. Moving on quickly. Item 4 on the agenda for this evening is Oakhampton history. And I would like to introduce to you Jane Goffey, who is going to give us a brief talk on the history of Oakhampton.
I shall report there. I don't need the microphone.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, normally I would be stood down there amongst you, but I've been told that I have to come up here tonight. So I'm being posh and coming up here. Right. As you can see, this is a documented history of Oakhampton Town. And this short talk is taken from 2 volumes. Can you hear me in the back all right? Yeah, good. Taken from 2 original volumes, which were typed on onion skin paper, which was incredibly fine paper. And they were typed up by somebody called E.H.Y. in 1931. So I did a bit of digging and I discovered that E.H.Y. was Dr. Edward Herbert Young, who was our borough medical officer of health, and he was an amateur historian. And when he retired, he wanted a little project, and he knew that in the town chest, which we still have, there were rolls of ancient documents and manuscripts. Now, of course, this is before the Devon Records Office was set up. And so he decided that these were so fascinating, including the notebooks from several mayors and town clerks in the 1600s, that he decided to copy all these notes and publish them, which he did. He also wrote in the Devonshire Association a short-lived parish history series. He wrote those, so those will be in the Central Library in Exeter. So, let's have a look at Dr. Young. There he is. Quite a good-looking chap, I think. And obviously a very keen and probably slightly on the spectrum, because he's probably spent some time immaculately typing up all these notes. It's taken me several years to digitise them, so I too am probably on the same spectrum. Right, now then, the first document he transcribed were the notes of Richard Shebbeare, the town clerk, in 1677. And that's the beginning of Richard Shebbeare's notebook, which I will give you a minute to read. And he begins his record with the announcement that in 1623, John Growden, gentleman, and Modernus Major, in other words, the new mayor, in this year, the town prison was built. That's it? Or that's where it was, I should say. That was the record for 1623. That's all he wrote. That's all that happened in the year the new prison was built. And I'm sure I'm sure you can recognise where that is. It's beside the river, and that's where there are a couple of old sketches that I've seen, in which the building stands. And it was it was quite a small building, but it was used for people who were found drunk and disorderly, surely not, and things like that. And they were slapped in the jail until they could pay their fine and be released. So that was put in the wall there with a little plaque to show that was the site of our prison. Right, next slide, please. So these are the things, the topics of interest that are detailed in those records. The plague and what the town did about it. They basically set up like a relief program for families of people who suffered from the plague and those who couldn't work. The Civil War. Why was our mayor imprisoned in Exeter Castle? You'd have to find out. Lists of the free men who could vote. Only free men had the vote, and they were landowners. So before an election, certain unscrupulous people divided up their land into plots and gave them to people in the town in return for a vote. And after the vote was done, they reclaimed them back again. I think they got paid a pint of beer or something for their trouble. All sorts of shenanigans like that went on in those times. We also had our watchmen, and the list of watchmen is very interesting because there are several familiar names amongst it, some of whom, well, not the people, but some of the names you'll still recognise in the town today, like Samson, and Yelland, and Weeks. Lots of names that we know. All right, now then, where am I up to? Oh yes, one of the interesting things in those notes, I found this. On the 3rd of August, 1628, being a Sabbath day, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, immediately after evening prayer ended at the Church of Oakhampton, there being now rain perceived to fall within or near the town, no rain, perceived to fall, this is medieval spelling, to fall within or near the town, and the streets then very dry, the water hill called the Lady or the East Water was suddenly risen about some 5 foot above the East Bridge, running at a more violent manner than had been usually known, and 'twas conceived the water did savour and smell of some brimstone. Now, I wonder what caused that. The town clerk felt free to make more comments and incidents than town clerks do today. In 1652, a lawsuit was brought that charged the mayor and the burgesses or councillors of appropriating monies intended for the poor. They won their case. However, in 1653, the town clerk notes, next one, I think, yes, the before mentioned William Turpin, a beggarly man and most bitter enemy to the mayor and burgesses, break his neck by falling down over Mrs. Hutchins' stairs at the sign of the angel. He that endeavoured to break the neck of the corporation and the credit of the principal burgesses, therefore fell into that pit which he had digged for them. The Angel Inn is where M.J. Turner stayed when he visited Oakhampton and made various sketches, now in the Tate Gallery, who have all his estate, and a copy of one of which hangs in St James Chapel. It is before the town council repaired the chapel in the late 1800s. It is the only record of the original Norman chapel that we have. Incidentally, that legal arbitration stated that the tenement of Holditch, near Peter Tavy, which the town owned as gifted charitable land, should be rented out and the income given to the poor in perpetuity. That Holditch charity was running until fairly recently, but unfortunately the money that it accrued was not really worth handing out these days. So sadly, the charity, the United Charities applied to have that charity closed. But Holditch has been running then for nearly 600 years. Number 6, next slide. This is Mr. Wardle. Mr. Wardle, who is actually from Wales, was elected MP for Oakhampton. Again, as you can imagine, there was probably a little bit of shenanigans going on, but Mr. Wardle was elected. He didn't want Oakhampton. These mugs were obviously made in London, which you can spell by the spelling of Oakhampton. But he was very much against corruption. And the Duke of York at the time, funny enough how that name reoccurs, the Duke of York at the time had a mistress, which was not known in those days, and his mistress was given the right to sell the cloth for army uniforms. And Mr. Wardle took exception to this, and so he took it to Parliament when he was MP, and he did a big thing about corruption in high places, and the public and Parliament were so astounded by this that they took that contract away from the mistress of the Duke of York, and but sadly the Duke of York had some very powerful friends. Doesn't that sound familiar? And they absolutely hounded poor Mr. Gatehouse now stands. He'd already built the walls apparently and set a roof, so this was sort of catching up with things. The stables and an orchard, altogether containing about 1 acre or less. So that would be the land between here and the river. Now, if you go to the garage, just the other side of Red Lion Yard, and you walk up to the back of the buildings there, you can see the remains of a beautiful archway, which is all that is left of that house's garden going down to the river. So the houses on this side must have been of some considerable size. During his lease, Mr. Northmore was to pay 6 shillings and 8pence a year to the town. I'm truncating this a bit because I know I haven't got much more. Right, so in 1716, the property was leased to William Northmore by the mayor, and in 1740 it was leased to John Luxmore. The Luxmores, of course, were another very prominent family, and when he died in 1750 it passed to his son. And in 1816 the lease for the executors of Charles Lexmore went to his cousin Charles Lexmore of Red Lion Square, Holborn. I wonder if that's where the Red Lion pub got its name from, with that family link, which of course which stood where Red Lion Yard is. So the term of the lease expiring, the lease reverted to the town, and after alteration it became the town hall, as the old guild hall, which was up by St James's Chapel, had burnt down, been rebuilt, but was in a very sad state. So there's a minute in the book which says, on the 9th of January 1826, meeting adjourned to New Town Hall on the Parade, which is what they call 4th Street. So, that's a familiar shop. We all know Donald's. But it's got a slightly older history than you might realise. John Bremilton, who filled the mayor's chair 24 times, was a wholesale haberdasher of hats and left a fair estate to his posterity. We're told that he was content to be at a sentencing rather than attend the juries by reason of abundance of business of his own. He was also called John Brimblecombe. Brimblecombe was the local name for blackberries. Under the Charter of Incorporation in 1623, there is no mention of his name. Apparently he held no office under the town. But under the Charter he was once chosen for the assistant burgesses in 1623. He lived in a house on the north side of 4th Street. On the site of that, in 1936, according to my original document, in 1936, this was occupied, and some of you may remember, by Messrs. Heckworths, a gentleman's outfitter. And so in 2026, this building is still a menswear shop, because Donald bought it from Donald Rook, who was the manager of Heckworths. When Heckworths left, Donald bought it, which is why it's called Donald, and it's now passed to Mark. So this is a history of a building that's more or less stayed throughout our history in the town as a menswear shop. I think there's been other things in between, but it's quite interesting that it started out in the 1600s as a menswear shop, and now in 2026 is still a menswear shop. So this is my heartfelt plea. This is why I asked to talk to the town council and yourselves, because these books contain all these wonderful stories, and as you can imagine, many, many more. And I'd like to save them for posterity. Like things like Albany Saville, who was the builder of Oaklands. What was his real name? Was he Oakhampton's answer to Trott? Why was Meldon so important to the history of our town? Little tiny Meldon, not a lot there, apart from a dam, but it was very important in the history of our town. All this and much, much more.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we now move on to item 5, which is questions from the public to the Town Council. So this will be your chance to ask your questions. I'll go to a written question first. Do we have any written questions? We don't have any written questions. So hands for anyone that has a question for us on the council. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know how the train station is at the top, the new one, has no toilets, and why?
Thanks very much for that, John. So we've asked these questions as well. As far as I'm aware, there are no services at the train station at this moment in time for us to put the toilets in. Not that it's for us to put the toilets in, as it currently sits in the Hamlets anyway. With regards to why they haven't made that provision, I wonder if there's someone in here that might know about that. So I'm going to pass over to Michael Ireland, and he may very well be able to fill you in on what's going on. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Just briefly, I'll explain. If you go, for example, on the Exeter-Exmouth line, all the small stations, or not so small station along there, have no toilets. It's Great Western's policy not to install toilets at their station. So, unfortunately, it's a Great Western issue. And so if we wanted to provide toilets, it would be at the council or the hamlet's behest. But Great Western don't do that for the station. The only reason we got toilets at Oakhampton station is because of the historic nature of the station. But there's none other. You can see what I mean, you prove what I'm saying, like going on the Exmouth line to see. So unfortunately, it's a question we need to put to Great Western as to whether they would reconsider that. But I don't think so, knowing Great Western, as I do pretty well. Thank you.
I don't yeah, this is something, as many of you know, I have been pursuing for some considerable time, because the interchange, as the new station will be called, will be a travel hub, which means that buses will be bringing people from as far away as Bude to travel on our train. Now, Oakhampton is not a particularly warm, balmy and sunny spot, as some of you may have realised. And I imagine if you've travelled on a bus for some time, you're over 50, you stand on a platform and the wind's blowing a hoolie, and we all know you're going to need to go to the loo. Now, I've been told, oh, people can go on the train. Yes, the train only arrives once every hour. So I am still fighting to get toilets in the vicinity of the station, if not actually at the station. And I have a cunning plan which you will hear about in due course.
Thank you very much, Jen. So that's one question. Am I going to be shocked and amazed to find that there's another question out there? Yes, young man. Aaron, isn't it? Aaron, if you'd like to.
Thank you. Sorry to bother you with the question, but the bus timetables with, from Exeter to Oakhampton, it goes right the way through central Devon area. Its timetable fails to match up in my eyes appropriately with the timetable of the trains from Oakhampton to Exeter, often having to wait an hour and a bit to get a train, or they just don't match. You have to wait a while, and I think it's a bit annoying for people who travel from these smaller areas who either have to take the bus journey or get the train.
Okay, thanks for bringing that to our attention. I think that has come up in the past, it's been spoken about, and once again I'm kind of looking in the direction of Michael Ireland because he has an intimate knowledge of these things, so I'll hand over to Michael Ireland again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And to address your question, unfortunately, there is no coordination between the bus service and the train. And when the bus companies have been asked about this, they're competing with each other. So it's a competition model which doesn't work. And so, unfortunately, that's what we're suffering from. And so I'm really sorry to hear that, but it is something I'm part of OCRAL and other railway groups that we will take up. So thanks for your question, and I will address it again and try and push on it. But there's a lack of coordination between the two. They're competing rather than cooperating, which is a problem of the last 10, 15 years. Thank you, sir, for your question.
Yes, thanks, Aaron. Has anybody else got any more questions? There we go, another one. This is going to be difficult, I can tell.
We'll see into this, couldn't I? What is the likelihood of Lidl being able to move to the east of Oakhampton?
So I'm going to hand over to our Chair of Planning, Tony Leach, and I'm sure he'll be able to help you with this one.
I get it, actually. At this moment in time, it's with Western planners. So they've had to go through a very complicated process and getting consultations from all our consultees, which are numerous. It has taken quite a few months to get all that information back. The initial information that came back was given to the developer, who didn't agree with some of it, so it's had to come back again. And as I understand it, all the consultees have now responded, and we're just waiting for the report from the planning department. Watch this space.
Thank you very much, Councillor Leach. So that's 3. Can we make it 4? Has anybody out there got any more questions? No? Okay. Harry? Absolutely, why not?
Thank you. The government recently, central government recently announced it wanted to do more resilience and make Britain war ready. Well, this was a while ago now. It was saying it wanted to hand projects such as infrastructure and community resilience and increase cadet numbers by up to 30% by 2030. And this might be out of the Oakhampton Town Council scope, but are there any plans to maybe do community resilience or mutual assistant groups or any of the kind?
Okay, so that kind of falls into the remit of another councillor, and that's Councillor Cummins, who's down there in the corner over there, and I suspect
that are going on. You look around the globe, what's going on with Mr. Trump and all his associates. You never know what's going to happen. So I don't know what people are planning, but there is a government directive about what people should be putting in place. So that's the follow-on after that. And I will be looking at how we can move that forward as a council in the future. But I need to get this first stage completed. So sit and listen, because you'll hear quite a lot about what's going on. And come and speak to me afterwards and I'll explain.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cummins. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so that's 4. Can we get 5? I think this could be a record if we got 5. No more questions. Okay, that being the case, I'm going to swiftly move on to item 6, which is Devon Communities Together, which is the Community Emergency Plan.
I'll try without. Very good. That's not water, hydrogen. Good evening. So, if I could have the first slide up, please. A little reminder of your local emergencies. Right. So, my name's Martin Rich. I'm Community Projects Advisor with an organisation called Devon Communities Together. We're a community development charity, been in existence for something over 60 years, getting involved in a wide range of activities, particularly working with community organisations, town and parish councils. And for the best part of 20 years now, we've been the people on the ground promoting emergency planning across Devon. And I do 2 or 3 presentations like this every month. My last session was in Dawlish, and prior to that, Oakhampton. Exeter. And on to North Devon later this month. So it's something that's sort of been active in the county. So there are about 100 towns and parishes that have emergency plans of one sort or another. Some are really good and really effective and efficient. Others were put together a few years ago when it was sort of fashionable to do it. but have remained on the shelf and gathered dust and aren't as useful as they might be. And from one of the questions that was raised a few moments ago, certainly an up-to-date emergency plan has the capacity to support a community in many, many ways. So if we can move on then, please. So we start with the formal organisation and what's known as the Local Resilience Forum, which brings together all the blue light services, all the public utilities, the health service, environment agency, lots of other organisations to plan for managing emergencies. This comes about as a result of a piece of legislation from about 20 years ago called the Civil Contingencies Act, which required all the authorities to work together to plan better, because history had shown that a number of situations, floods, major weather incidents, terrorism, major accidents, outcomes could have been better had the emergency services been better coordinated and cooperated better with each other. So the Local Resilience Forum now manages the emergency planning for Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and their guidance, their risk management is all published on their website. But the legislation also recognised that there was scope for community involvement, that not always was it the case that the formal structure was the only thing that could respond to emergencies. So if we can move on then, please. So essentially an emergency plan is all about preventing fatalities and protecting property. Here in the southwest, livestock considerations are important, also protecting our infrastructure. But also it's not just about protecting and dealing with emergencies, it's also about recovery, and that's often an important element that's overlooked. Whilst it's a statutory requirement of local authorities to support communities recovering from a major incident, in practice, because of budget constraints and limitations on manpower, it often falls back on the immediate community to build back and try and help people recover from an event. And let's not forget that sometimes these events can go on, the impact can go on for a very long time. So it's not uncommon for people to be out of their homes for a year after a flood. Where there have been major disasters, it's taken a long time, and sometimes communities are permanently scarred by an event. Right, next slide, please. So the community emergency plan begs the question, what happens when the emergency services can't get to you? If they're overwhelmed, if they're called in too many different directions, or if weather conditions prevent them reaching you, or they just need extra resources, then that's where a community emergency plan comes into place. It's very much about being sort of first on the scene, and when there's no immediate response from the blue light services, then it's a community response. And all that is about planning that response and having some organisation around it. Move on, please. So the emergency plan covers a wide range of risks, just about anything. And it's very much a case of determining what are the significant risks in your community, but also considering what else might happen. So if you think about what's happened in Devon recently, major utilities failures in South Devon and in Brixham, where we had the water pollution and then the failure of the gas supply. We've had several major bomb incidents in Exeter, Plymouth, Exmouth recently.